Welcome to the UK Run Chat podcast. I'm Joe Williams, and in this episode, Michelle is joined by green runners Ellie Wardle and Darren Evans. We all love the thrill of a race, the sense of accomplishment that comes with crossing that finish line. The green runners are asking us to just stop for a moment and think about the environmental impact of these events and the sport that we all love. Michelle, Ellie, and Darren discuss how races can run towards a greener and more sustainable future, and also give you some resources to work towards becoming more sustainable as well. Enjoy this chat. See you on the next episode.
Darren, thanks so much for joining us on the UK Run Chat podcast today. Would you both like to introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. Hiya, I'm Ellie. I'm a member of the Green Runners and also a sustainability consultant for the sports events industry. So yeah, it's great to be here.
And yeah, I'm Darren. I'm one of the co-founders of the Green Runners. I kind of write about climate change and running, and I'm also the founder of Pair Ups.
Yeah, brilliant. So tell us a little bit more about the Green Runners then and its mission in promoting sustainability within the running industry. Ellie, do you want to say a little bit about it?
So the Green Runners were a global community. They're formed after COP26, and we have a shared vision of running without the footprint. And at present, we have around 1,000 members across the world, but we're growing by the day and expanding our global reach. And we focus on 4 pillars, which is how we move, primarily how we travel, such as to our clubs, to our meetups, to events, how we eat, have a planet-focused diet, so, reducing meat and dairy consumption, and also with our sports nutrition, how we kit up, so emphasizing using what we have to the end of its life, reducing what we do buy, and opting for thrifting and secondhand purchases in most instances. And also, we can't do any of this without our 4th pillar, which is how we speak out. Yeah. So that's probably the most important one.
Yeah, which is, I guess, what we're helping with today, really, into how people can do that. I mean, you mention all those pillars and you think, wow, actually, I feel a bit overwhelmed because there's so much that we need to change and think about, isn't there?
Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, especially like we've all been there. Like I remember at the start of my sustainability journey, I found I had terrible eco-anxiety, like everything was overwhelming, a plastic bag, a coffee, having a coffee cup, everything I did, I was kind of like questioning. So what we actually do at the Green Runners is we just encourage people to pledge, make one pledge for each of our 4 pillars. So you don't have to do everything perfectly in that sense. You just pick a few things that within your realm that you can work on. So for one person, it might be go meat-free 1 day a week for how you eat. For how you kit up, it might be I'm going to only buy 2 pairs of shoes this year instead of 10. So it's just making those changes, and we know they'll be different for everyone depending on their circumstances as well.
Yeah, there are small things that people can do differently, aren't there, I guess?
Everyone's different, and we've kind of come up with this thing called 50 Shades of Green. So it's a really good way of kind of measuring where you are on the scale. So you don't have to be a massive activist doing loads of stuff. You can choose the lighter shade of green, and then as you get more confident, you could maybe go a bit greener. But it's about creating that whatever's comfortable for the individual, because everyone's on their different journey. And that's what's good about the Green Runners is some of the co-founders, we have carbon engineers, we have so basically we have runners that care about the climate, but we've also got sort of carbon engineers and climate scientists that like to run. So there's a real good mix of people, and there's a real good mix of knowledge within the co-founding group of the Green Runners. So that really helps me, who doesn't really know a lot about climate change, that I can then talk to those individuals if I've got any questions. And so can anyone of the community who have those sort of questions. We have a resources page where they can go and have a look at.
That's good to hear, actually. So we don't need to feel overwhelmed. So we're going to focus on events today, which is in itself such a large area, isn't it? So Ellie, you work in this area. What would you say are the most pressing challenges that the race industry is facing at the moment?
Well, when I looked at this question, I think you can interpret it two ways. You can think about it in terms of how climate change influences running, so how it influences races. And as we know, the droughts, floods, wildfires, heat waves have all foreseen cancellation, postponing of races, runners suffering. And, it's been scientifically found that as the temperature increases, so does your marathon race time.
Yeah, that's a
so
good
you can
point.
also think of it as how the industry influences climate change. And because I work a lot behind the scenes, kind of doing carbon reporting, data collection of races, so I can see the emissions from each facet of an event. So the participant travel, it can be enormous, especially for the major marathons. It's up to 98% of a mass sport event's carbon footprint is just from how people get there. So kind of, puts into perspective how even with all the bottles and the waste and the merchandise, travel is just enormous. And that's often from long haul travel. So that's a massive challenge for the running industry, because it's also scope free. So it means it's beyond the race organisers' control. Like, you can't ban people, you can't, prescribe how they move, how they travel there. So yeah, that I would say that's a big challenge. And also a lot of what the race organisers do is dependent upon rules, legislations, and what's actually accessible. So in an ideal world, we'd all have compostable bottles and cups and such, but realistically, that's our systems can't cater for that. So you could have a compostable cup, and the most local composting facility could be 200 miles away, which totally defeats the point.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a lot of challenges in different aspects, but I think it all still comes down to the communication, awareness, speaking out pillar, because you can't change what you don't know.
Yeah. So how do we make changes there? I mean, I know some of the races I've done in the UK, they have promoted car sharing, for example. Yeah. And I know I've seen some athletes on social media who are travelling abroad for lots of races talking about getting the train rather than the plane. Is it as simple as that we just need to be more conscious of how we're travelling?
I think it's conscious. It's also understanding that as well, because if you look at kind of the feedback surveys, and participants will, because no one really knows until you get into this industry, that they see the plastic bottles and the waste as kind of the biggest concern.
Yeah.
So it's until we kind of shift that narrative to kind of focus on the biggie, which is the travel, and then we could help encourage people in a gentle way, and with incentives about how they can make more conscious decisions about their race calendar and how they're traveling to and from these events. So on terms of what the race organisers can do, I always encourage them to have a kind of transport page, like detailing all the different options to get there and making this really seamless and kind of clear cut and accessible. So it makes it really easy for people to plan their journeys in advance. And, having this as kind of a active travel hierarchy. So you have at the top of the page, you have, the least carbon intensive option, walking, cycling, and what races can do to encourage this with bike valets, trips, kind of organised cycles, and then all the way down. So ideally, flights should be at the bottom of the list. Yeah. You just scroll.
Yeah, make it harder work for people to find out how to fly there.
It's like, I think about it as a supermarket, isn't it? What you get at high level versus the shelves up and below. And 5, in terms of travel, 5 easy wins would be encourage lower carbon participant travel, so car sharing, EV charging points, bike storage, bike tours, dedicated shuttle buses, and you could also partner with local travel providers. And you can have kind of travel packages, so kind of include these travel tickets, shuttle buses in your registration fees. So it's rather than it's an add-on, you can have it kind of integral to how someone signs up. Obviously keeping it local. So prioritising your local suppliers, vendors, volunteers, and also you can incentivise and encourage participation from local community run clubs. So this will reduce kind of the scope 1 and 2 travel from the staff and volunteers, and also just minimise the travel aspect of the event. And back to how we speak out, if you promote and provide the shared travel options on your website and make this really clear and easy for everyone to access.
Yes, spot on. I think the only thing I'd add on to that is race directors making start times in line with public transport, and ideally when they're planning a route, as near to a train station as possible, which is, that will make it easier for the runner or the individual then to choose that option of train or public transport if they're not under pressure to get there for an early start. And also if it is near to a train station, then that makes it more accessible for the runners to make that positive decision, to think, instead of driving, I'm going to catch the train. So that for me is really important as a race director.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. You want to know you can get there within good time, don't you, and be relaxed and not be stressing about it. And quite often, as you say, if it's an early start, the only option is to drive, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a really, really good point. So Ellie, you mentioned just partnering with kind of local travel options there. What else can we do locally? I mean, I guess that's a big thing, isn't it, in terms of just being more sustainable, is partnering up with local organisations. How can that help?
So in terms of partnering with local, this has kind of multiple benefits. First and foremost, it's about so it's really important for directors to consider when planning an event is how this short-term event can leave a long-lasting impact on the local community. In the event industry, we call this the event legacy or community legacy, which is essentially the long-term effects, and in this case environmental, that events can aim to create both before, during and after. So obviously some renowned examples of this is like the Commonwealth and Olympic Games, where they've supported local community before, during and after, such as through supporting local businesses, local infrastructure, the redevelopment of the area outside the Olympic Park, and also through carbon literacy training in sport. But also, this is the impact they can leave and the way they can support will vary depending on the location, their capacity, their budget, and also obviously what's in the local area. So with smaller event organisers, they could do things like investing in or donating to a local conservation project. They could organise team volunteer days to support the environmental work in the areas that they're hosting their events in, and also working with local suppliers and businesses, which will have multiple snowball effect on the local community as well.
Yeah, that's going to only have a positive impact, really, isn't it? If you're buying local, investing in local businesses. Yeah. Right. So we've talked about the biggie, which is travel, which is surprising actually, because when we think about event sustainability, we do seem to think about plastic bottles and medals and t-shirts. They come up a lot. So let's just delve into those a little bit. And just talk about, let's start with the medals and the goodie bags. I mean, how can we be more sustainable there? I mean, do we need them, first of all? Because some people do really like a medal, don't they? And others are kind of, I'm not that bothered. So how do we satisfy the needs of everybody here?
Well, again, as it comes to every kind of procurement decision, or whenever event director wants to buy anything, consider it's called a sustainable hierarchy, which goes in the order of rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle, recover. So rethink. So it's kind of when you're in that planning stage, think, do we, as in the race directors and the runners, really need or want goodie bags and medals? And you could kind of gauge the response to this through a survey or just trial and error, like trying different things out, swapping wooden medals in or coasters and total medal alternative, which a lot of kind of the smaller scale events have tried. And when it comes to reduce, big problem is obviously the surplus of goodies, medals and T-shirts, which often are dated, branded and can't be reused. And so if race directors can try and order less to avoid surplus, and as in custom orders as well, so the exact number of T-shirts or medals that you're going to give out. And obviously, as we all know, the good guys at Trees Not Tees now offer opt-out options for T-shirts and medals. And so this is, especially for runners who race regularly, it's a really good option for them if they don't want another T-shirt or medal bunged in a drawer.
Yeah.
And then for when, obviously, like, none of us are ever going to say never get a T-shirt, never get a medal, because think about, like, London Marathon, I believe, has a really high percentage of first-time marathoners, and it could be their only marathon. So obviously a T-shirt and medal is really meaningful to them. And for any kind of big achievement, your first 100 miler, your first 50 miler, it's just the problem comes in when it's, when people race regularly, and it becomes a bit questionable if they need 2 medals every week to add. Sustainable alternatives to medals would be recycled, upcycled. You can get digital, or adding to the benefits of local community. You could partner with your local woodmaker or crafts maker and have locally made and customized medals. These could be wooden, these could be slate, these could be coasters, or from local raw materials. And you can even have alternatives to medals. So I think in the Twitter feed we had, people were giving out really good ideas, such as I like the coffee and cake idea. Having coasters, food from local businesses, and kind of what we call like kind of really useful practical items that you can reuse again and again. I'm not sure there's too much you can do with a medal again and again, but if the people have got ideas,
I don't know. We've been giving out quite a lot of medals to our running club, to juniors. Cool.
Yeah,
for kind of doing well.
Yeah, and I've seen people donate.
They've gone down quite nicely. So they're still in circulation, but they're being kind of reused. So that's quite nice.
I really like that. And when they donate to kind of that, local schools and charities, that's obviously a really cool thing. And when it comes to goodie bags, obviously none would be the best option. Yeah,
we don't need them.
We don't need them, do we? We like them, but we don't need them.
Yeah, I know. We all do need something to get us to the line, like some kind of motivation incentive at the end. But there are different options for this. You could also have virtual goodie bags and e-vouchers. There's lots of websites offering these.
That's such a good idea.
And you could also have these for the local businesses in your area. So it could be discounts at the local eateries, at the local shops, etc. Or for one of their sponsors. And then obviously to avoid waste, surplus, and especially food waste, is to provide kind of non-perishable food and drink items so people can take them away. Like it's not something you have to consume immediately or within a few days. Just kind of exploring the different options you can have and prioritizing locally supplied goodies to have at the finish line. And I know Darren's has a really good system going with his medals and laces, which
Darren's nodding along vigorously there. So Darren, why don't you tell us about your sustainable medals? They're quite innovative.
So when I kind of thought about the race and what we would give, everyone kind of likes a medal, so we don't do any T option at all, but everyone kind of likes a medal. But the wooden ones, the feedback is that they're a little bit light and you want something a little bit weighty. So the slate ones are a really good option because it's recycled slate, which is a natural product. And one thing that we don't do is we don't put a date on them either, because you never know. You'll get the registrations, but not everyone's going to turn up to the race for whatever reason. So you could end up with a surplus there, even though you could plan ahead for the amount of runners that you've got registered, but very rarely do you get the full amount of runners turn up on the day. So to non-date them means that they can carry on to the following year. Yeah. And what you can then do is with the iTab, which has your time, you can then add the date onto the iTab if the runner wants that date of when that was. So, and then to cut out on any ribbon, because obviously when you order medals, you then get ribbon. We decided to use pre-loved trainer laces, which we got from Rerun Clothing. So Dan and Charlotte obviously do Rerun, and any trainers that were destined for end of life, not into landfill or incineration, because they wouldn't do that. But any that were end of life that couldn't be passed on to a charity, we would take the laces out, wash them in white vinegar, and thread them through the medals that we received from the medal company. So no waste medals.
Yeah, that's lovely. How have they been received then, generally?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, in fact, this year, to kind of make awareness around climate change, we had all the different colours in the climate change colour. So from blue to sort of white into red, just to show the effect of climate change. And that went down. So you can be quite creative with it. But we're in our third year, and everyone loves the medal because it's weighty. It's quite classy in the way that it's been designed, and because it's got that weight to it, and people understand the ethos of the race. Yeah. So I think that's another thing around education. Is when you and going back to Ellie's point about transport and having a transport page, it's really important that when you advertise your race, about the ethos of the race, so people kind of understand it then when they get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and you do kind of, I've certainly seen more races taking this into consideration now. What happens if a race doesn't? How do we approach that? How can we affect change there? Have you got any tips?
Well, for me personally, so with regards to Trees Not Tees, if any race didn't offer Trees Not Tees, I wouldn't go to that race, or I wouldn't enter that race. And then I realised that actually I would only enter the races that offer Trees Not Tees. And then I realised that the races that I need to enter are the ones that don't offer Trees Not Tees, so that I can then speak to the race director on the day. And I think that, that whole piece around speaking out is really important, and making people aware. And from what I've seen, especially being involved with the Green Runners and, the community that's growing, runners are understanding now this Trees Not Tees option. And I think it's okay to provide medals, but it should be, it should be an add-on. I did a Centurion race early on in the year, the 100 Hills, and they gave out a iron-on badge, which was exactly the same as the medal, which was brilliant.
Wow.
I did another race about 6 weeks ago called the Bates Green Gallop, and you could choose either no medal, an old medal from previous years, or a new medal, but you had to pay extra.
Yeah.
So there's loads of different ways on it how we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, as a race director, how difficult is that to actually put into practice? Because like with a lot of medals now, people will tend to go for best value, which means they often have to order in advance. They can take a long time to arrive. So how do you actually put that into practice where you give people the option? Do you have to have kind of lengthy cut-off dates before the race itself? How does that work in practice?
Yeah, ideally. I mean, the normal cut-off is about 6 weeks before, especially with no waste medals. So I don't know about any other manufacturers of medals. Maybe it's a bit more difficult with the metal medals or the heavier metals, the medals. But I think if you plan to, everyone has a cap on their limit of runners. And for me especially, I will only order up to that maximum.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, if you don't date them, then you can use them the following year. So, it's a real difficult one. Medals, I think, are here to stay, and it's just about how we get the best option. I mean, I like Earth Run's. Their medals, you literally plant their medals. They've got seeds in, and they grow.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, it's amazing. So there are loads of options out there now that are more sustainable. So all I'd say is to any race directors is have a look at the options that are out there. Don't just stick with the supplier that you've had for years. Look at what other options are out there.
Yeah. And I guess listen when people chat to you at the end of a race and go,
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I don't necessarily want a medal today or a T-shirt.
Exactly that. Like Ellie said, how many medals do you actually need? How many T-shirts do you need? So, but for those bespoke, those ones where they're a pinnacle race for you, then it's really important. So I think medals will always stay. It's just choosing the best option.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, if we can have an opt-in, that would be the best scenario, wouldn't it? Yeah. So we've chatted about travel. We've talked about goodie bags and T-shirts and medals. What else do we need to consider? What about kind of plastic bottles and waste and things from races? How can we make changes there? What do we need to be aware of?
Myself and Ellie have had conversations about this.
Have you?
Yeah, we've.
It's Darren's passion project.
Okay, tell me more.
It's so. I mean, 98% of the carbon footprint is travel, which we know.
Yeah.
But the most visible thing that you see is the plastic bottles, and I've got I'm going to call them out because it's our fourth pillar. Is Buxton Water. Okay, so obviously London Marathon, Brighton Marathon. I had the opportunity to do Brighton Marathon, and the amount of bottles were horrendous. I'm just on a mission now to try and not stop, because we need to provide hydration at aid stations. There's a real question. This is a whole different other conversation. Is how many aid stations do you actually need in a 40K race? So when you compare road running to trail running,
very different.
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
And I ran Brighton Marathon with my bladder pack that I would run in the trail. I didn't have to take any bottles of water. It wasn't that much more inconvenient for me. And in fact, I had a really good run, as in times. I know, it's more about PBs and stuff like that in sort of road marathons, but it wasn't an inconvenience. And because bladder packs and vests have got so much better over the years, even the last 2 years, the technology that is used in these vests are so much better than what they were. So they're not as inconvenient as what they used to be. So for me, I would like to see some of the road marathon races take some of the ultra trail ethos into some of their races, because, and again, my own personal view is what I saw on the day is, runners picking up a bottle, taking a couple of swigs, throwing a little bit over their head, discarding the bottles. And there were photos 5 days later of bottles still discarded around Brighton. So that for me is a big issue. And, then and I'll call them out again. You can cut this out if you want to. But Buxton Water say that it's fine because they're made of PET, but that might be the best plastic, but it's the energy that's involved to create those bottles, and then the water that goes in the bottles that is all, it's hardly ever used. So that for me, plastic bottles are my big thing. I'm completely cupless. One of the ideas that I took from Ultra X, actually, I did their 50K at Hazelmere, and they had a load of sort of small 10, 15 litre bottles, like camping bottles of water with a little tap, lined up along the wall. So you then don't get the issue of runners queuing behind out of maybe two bigger bottles, if that makes sense, storage containers. So I use that in my race, and that works. And everyone knows it's cupless as well. So they have to bring their own cup.
And that doesn't have to be expensive, does it? I mean, you've made your own out of.
I make my own. I've been using them for 2 years. It's literally a Tetra Pak carton, either an oat milk carton. Use the bottom, fold it up, stick it in my vest. I use it for lattes, for water, everything, and it's so easy to use. But even the little plastic fold up ones, I can't believe I'm saying this, but they're a better option than having tons of hard plastic bottles.
Yeah, and they fold up really small, don't they? They're inexpensive.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. It would be good to see races get better at this. I know various things have been trialled. I've seen like ideas of the bubbles, and I don't know how successful they've been. Have you got any thoughts on that, Ellie?
The Oohoo, the brilliant company, really innovative, and certainly can see them being a way forward especially for road marathons and big events like that. But obviously, because they're kind of in the early days, they are too expensive for a lot of events, and then the whole transport thing comes in. But I think using them at the big events is obviously going to save a ton of plastic bottles, because that's where most of them are. As Darren said. Road. I know I speak to quite a lot of mass sport organisers and the hosts of like the larger marathons and events, and they are looking towards the trail running community and trail running races for inspiration, especially when it comes to self-sufficiency, and not least because of in the heat waves, it's been really evident how people carrying hydration have often fared better than those who are relying on water stations, which were struggling to keep up with the increased demand and low capacity. I don't know how much you want me to go into this. I could.
I'm fascinated. So please, say a bit more about it.
I can literally see for hours, so I'll try and keep it short. Some ideas for race directors would be to at least have the plastic-free goal in sight, like kind of steps you can get towards, such as Royal Parks Half and Bath Half are also aspiring to be plastic-free, and it's kind of incrementally year on year. They're trying out different initiatives to try and get to that 80 to 100%. There's also lots of guides actually on how event organisers can minimise or reduce their plastic, such as the IOC is Plastic Game for Sport. Volvo Ocean Race has turned the tide on plastic at sport events and is even a plastic-free sport event toolkit. There's a plastic-free pledge, which festivals and sports events can take, and it has like guides, resources, and also like a kind of community feel to that as well. So you can learn from each other, motivate each other. And as Darren said, to really emphasise the whole pre-event communication piece would be to encourage runners to bring their own bottles and cups if they can. You have to make runners aware in advance so they don't turn up with nothing and then you don't have any solutions for them to drink from. And in terms of the whole kind of gel wrapper waste conundrum, you do. This is, as Darren said, it's very visible, especially on road marathons, the kind of trails of gel wrappers and waste that kind of lead along the 26.2 roads. So yeah, there are some solutions. There are some brands out there, so kind of like the plastic free or responsible brands. So plastic free would be such things like One Good Thing, outdoor provisions, but also just kind of supermarket staples like bananas and kind of decanting things into, I know like a lot of trail races have these aid stations. They get big bulk buy and then decant things like into little paper cases for runners to pick up with them. It's also like there are some good responsible like sports nutrition brands. So I know High Five and Raw Velo in particular take responsibility for their packaging at events they partner and sponsor with. So they're there and they will recycle it through, I believe it's TerraCycle and First Mile at the top of my head. And emphasizing using your own hydration bladder and bottles. I know some road events are starting to do this, like at London Marathon last year. If you read their policy, this year, and at the stand, we encourage people, as one of their pledges was to run with one of the bottle belts to kind of reduce the number of water bottles we'll have to provide. And some local, smaller examples. Tape to Tape have recycling tent at the finish line of their Great Grimsby 10K. And a lot of other races could also kind of copy this lead and have a volunteer run waste station or dedicated zone, or even have a green team, along the route or at the start and finish. And again, with that communication piece, to ask runners not to litter, to even impose a kind of penalty for like a DQ, which I know a lot of races have done if runners are seen littering. And ask for tail runners if they could pick up any litter they find along the way to ensure that the event has left no trace.
Yeah. So actually, the things you've mentioned there, Ellie, are really achievable, aren't they? They're all really simple things. Yeah. It just shows what you can do if you're aware of it. So I think what you're saying is the first step is to actually say we need to make some changes here.
Yeah.
And just start somewhere.
Yeah. And it is that whole education piece. It really is. Yeah. So there's two brands, Lucio Delitos, which are wrapped in a banana leaf, which
that's right. Yeah.
natural, and they're a good energy bar. And then you've got One Good Thing that are completely wrapperless, and they've got an energy bar for pre and during the race, and then protein bars for after the race. And they're completely wrapperless, and that's where we kind of want to get to. So going back to Ellie's point about, sort of the less perishable items, you want to have you need to have a nutritional option based on the distance of the race, but there are loads of good options out there now.
Yeah. But actually, when we're training for a long event, we do all that stuff on our own anyway, don't we? So, we should be encouraging runners to be more self-sufficient, shouldn't we? Yeah, we don't need to be hand-holding them through races necessarily.
I'd also throw in there, I know these are becoming very popular, is refillable gel flasks.
Yes.
So they can replace like 8 to 10 gels, some of them. And I know some of the popular brands are now doing them. High Five comes to mind, Active Root. You could encourage your favourite sports nutrition brand to perhaps even offer this on their website.
Yeah. And again, we're back to that speaking out, aren't we? Yes. So have we covered everything? Well, I know it's a huge topic. Have we covered the main points that we need to be looking at as events? Because I'd like to move on briefly to what, runners can do as well, just outside of racing briefly.
I think so. I just want to throw in there cable ties.
Yes.
Reusable cable ties. One of the big things that I look for now are single-use cable ties, because especially on big ultra races, especially trail races, not so much roads, but the amount of signage that's used with single-use cable ties. In fact, I had a good discussion with Davey who does the lap, the race director for the lap.
Oh, yeah.
And we was talking about each other's races, and he said, I'm not going to talk to you unless you tell me you use reusable cable ties. And so I had to physically show him on my phone my signage with reusable cable ties, and that's really encouraging. That was at the National Running Show in January, and you've got a race director challenging another race director about reusable cable ties. And it was I was expecting to be challenging others, and it was good for Davey to challenge. And it was really encouraging. So if there's any RDs out there that are, have got races coming up or thinking about putting races on, reusable cable ties are, definitely use those. Save so much waste.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So let's just move on then, just to what steps can individual runners take, because running sustainably goes far beyond event organisers, doesn't it? And I'd like to touch firstly upon the latest controversy in the industry of these single-use racing shoes. We seem to be moving in the wrong direction here. What's going on? You got any thoughts
about the single-use running shoes? Yeah,
because all this work we're putting in to kind of reduce impact on climate, and then suddenly we've got brands releasing shoes like this.
Yeah, it's shocking, to be fair. I mean, the Green Runners have called out Adidas around their single-use shoe. We've had a lot of commentary about it and a lot of agreement from runners about it. It's shocking. There will always be a need for advancements in technology. However, to make a shoe that is guaranteed to last only one marathon is shocking in my view. And I work with obviously a lot of trainers in what I do with pair ups, and there are 22 billion pairs of trainers made every year, which is shocking, and the majority of them will end up in landfill. Or in incineration. And the majority of them are a minimum of 95% fossil fuel. They're made out of, peter. And so it's shocking. So for Adidas to advertise that and also get over the loophole of making a certain amount to make it available for the public at that price, it is shocking, but there will be runners out there that will be enthused by what they see and will want to try and use as much technology as they can to get that PB. I've got a view that we should be looking after the planet rather than our PBs, and that's kind of where I am on it, really. If you want to check out any commentary around it, then check out the greenrunners.com on Instagram, because there's loads of commentary about it.
Yeah, and I should probably say that Darren's working really hard to prolong the life of running shoes, aren't you, with pair ups, and help educate people on how to repair them.
Yeah, it's all about education. Yeah, literally. It's providing a puncture repair kit for trainer uppers to extend the life and stop them going into landfill. That is basically it. The waste is, it's probably, it's the biggest waste issue with our kit. It's by far, and then that's followed up with race t-shirts, and apparel. We will always need trainers. We will always need. For me, I can run in any pair of shorts and any t-shirt, but I will need a pair of trainers and I'll need a waterproof jacket. So for me, they're the most fundamental bits: is a pair of trainers and a running jacket, especially obviously this time of year. So with regards to apparel, I'm totally against apparel, new apparel, and I'm going to go off on one ear again, so you can cut it out. But I made a comment on LinkedIn about a company called Pressia, who's released all this new, apparel that's, technically advanced, it's more sustainable, and all of that. But we just don't need that kit. There's so much of it already produced, already in the world. We don't need it. And another thing, just going back to what race directors could do, is provide a kit swap shop at their races, so people can bring along any old kit that they don't use anymore, and then they can swap it out. So it's a great way of repurposing product, rather than it being, given to a charity that would potentially end up in a landfill in a third world country, because there is evidence where trackers have been placed on these items and they've travelled thousands of miles around the world, where they were given to into a charity bin, at a supermarket. It's with the runner or the individual putting that in with good intent, thinking it was going to go somewhere when actually it's not. So there's so much waste around that. So yeah, going back to your point, Adidas, for me, have made the wrong choice as regards promoting their Adizero. Sorry, Ellie, go on.
No, what you said was great, and especially the whole communication piece, because it's only once you delve into the impact of the clothing industry, especially the trainer industry, like, as in, if the trainer industry were a country, it'd be the world's 17th largest polluter, which is emitting as much CO2 per year as the whole of the UK.
Oh, that's incredible.
And sneaker production, so trainer production, accounts for 1.4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and which is only just behind air travel, which is 2.5% of all emissions. So, yeah, this is the whole, why we speak out and kind of learning more about it, so you can make the correct changes and responsible, actions going forward as a runner. It's just to learn more, because you can't change what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so as Darren's after the communication piece, and now, you might be thinking, what do I do now? Who do I buy from? That is very tricky, because we're bound with greenwashing across the fashion industry. So you can't wholly believe a lot of the claims these companies are making, especially when they use, the words green or recycled content, and other kind of buzzwords. And so actually the best thing you could do as a runner is buy less and prolong what you already have, because the most sustainable apparel and shoes is what's already on your feet and in your wardrobe. I'll just give us a few shout outs to Pre-Love Sports. They're a fantastic way of getting secondhand clothing, really, a lot of the time, really high quality, from jackets to socks to leggings to trainers to accessories. I always use Vinted. I use Facebook Marketplace. There's Running Gear Buy and Sell. There's eBay. There's Depop. And a lot of these items are near perfect. A lot of them still have the same labels on them. So buying secondhand doesn't mean, secondhand quality. It's not a lower quality. And especially if you're a runner, you're about to get sweaty and muddy in it anyway.
Yeah.
But that's what we do, is we kind of rethink, do I need another pair of trainers? Reduce. So, kind of commit to buying less and prolonging the life of your pair. So you buy less in a year, and opting for secondhand, thrifting. As again, Darren said, you could, encourage your club to do swaps, so kit swaps.
Our club does this. It works really well, actually. Yeah.
Especially if you don't get on with a pair of shoes, the whole problem with buying online and such is that you can't return them after you've worn them, that you don't know if they fit if you don't wear them. So that's where the kind of swapping sites, clubs, groups, and also just Facebook Marketplace comes really in handy. And because I don't have a statistic at the top of my head, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, was it 25 million pairs of trainers are made a year?
22 billion.
22 billion. Okay.
Whoa.
22
so,
billion.
Yeah, that has come from consumers.
Yeah, in 2018, yes, something like 55 million pairs of trainers were produced every day.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Yeah, so and just going back to that bit about the clubs, actually, any clubs that have got a junior running club, it's really good to do that kit swap, because obviously kids grow out so quickly.
What option I see is New Haven volume.
My phone just decided to go a bit crazy then. But yeah, for juniors in running clubs, that kit swap works really, really well.
Yeah, such good ideas. I love the idea of having one at races as well. That's, as long as that's advertised well in advance, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating having you both on to chat about this. I think we could talk about it for hours, couldn't we? I think we're on the same page as well. So where can our listeners find out more if we've got a race director listening who wants to make some improvements, or we've got a runner just wanting to find out more? Where can they get in touch and find some resources?
Yeah, I'd say the best point of contact would be joining the Green Runners and contacting us through one of our social media channels, so whether that be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even email. If you're a race director, there's, I believe, a few hubs online. There's like a race director hub, or even just reaching out to like other local organisers in your area to see what you could do together, or finding local suppliers, or kind of coming up with solutions to common issues such as the waste, the composting, the bottles, stuff like that. And yeah, I'm always open to anyone wanting to get in touch with any questions at any time as well.
Yeah, I can highly recommend Ellie. She is the font of all knowledge when it comes to race sustainability. So yeah, give Ellie a shout.
So where can we find you, Ellie?
Best place would be I'm on Instagram as _treading_lightly_.
We'll pop it in the show notes and then people can find it. Yeah.
Or just message the Green Runners and they'll probably forward it on to me. So.
Is there? Are we allowed to talk about your rescore?
Yeah, this isn't related to Green Runners, but I work for a really cool organisation called the Council for Responsible Sport.
Yeah.
And we were behind certifying London Marathon recently, who got gold. And if you go on our website, you've got a list of certified events from all over the world, a lot of major marathons and such. And we have this really cool app, which is free to use, free to access for events of any size, any location, called Rescore. So it's free to sign up, it's free to use the resources, the guides, the templates, the case studies. And it's kind of, we have 5 different pillars, so to speak, which we do tie into the Green Runners pillars in many aspects, such as we have planning, communications, procurement, resource management, access and equity, and community legacy. So it's a real good balance of ESG, so the environmental, the social, the governance, economics of putting on a responsible event. And also on our website, if you wanted, you can also download the standards. We have a standards page. So if you're an organisation or an event, you can download it. It's kind of like a checklist. And, it's been used since 2007 by hundreds of event organisers. It's been piloted by many. It's adapted, improved, and we'll have further improvements and adaptations in 2024 as well, to make sure they align with like the pinnacle of global standards, such as the UN standards. You can book a one-to-one with me for free. It's just a 30-minute call just to see where you're at, what your aspirations are, how we can help. And you could feel free just to use our resources and such and work your way through the free self-assessment.
Oh, fantastic. So that's the Rescore app.
Rescore,
which you can download and get into that way.
Yes,
that sounds
online and
really
events. You could have multiple people use it within your team as well.
Yeah, it's great. Really good.
Yeah, what a fantastic resource. Well, thank you so much for your time. To all those listening out there, I hope you've enjoyed listening in, and do get in touch with the Green Runners. Hopefully you've got an influx of some new members.
Cheers, Michelle.
Thanks
so much.
Thanks a lot.